is going on anyway? When you thought you recorded the whole podcast and then it disappeared. It just disappeared. I don't even know. Do I have it in me to do this one more time? This morning I was walking across the street doing the regular dog walk with Sadie, and I was listening to the Chani app talk to me about this full moon. I had already recorded the podcast, so it was just waiting for a final edit, and then I was going to have it published at noon. That was my plan. And Chani went on to say that it's a full moon and things are going to be messy, and it's sort of like you're going to have stuff on a page and then Neptune's going to come in and spill water all over it and it'll be beautiful but messy. And I was like, well, that'll be nice for other people, but I'm all set, so that wouldn't happen to me. I was actually sitting there trying to imagine how my day would get messy because I thought my day was clean looking, that nothing would come in and do that. And then I came back to publish this and the recording wouldn't download from the cloud. There was nothing I could do. It was just this strangest thing. I had to reload the app, and when I did that, it disappeared. It was exactly like that reading said. It was as if something just got poured over the page and you could no longer read it. So here I am dealing with the full moon in this way, and also wanting to talk about what I came here to talk about. But everything feels a little inside up, and out and backwards. And I don't even know if what I was talking about makes sense anymore. Here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're entering the very, very end of autumn. Solstice is the beginning of winter. And so this full moon brings us to solstice. And it seems to be a very important time for me to honor the earth and the bringing of the greens inside. I can just feel it in my bones, how important that is to me. The evergreen that promises the return of spring somehow. And it also promises that even though winter is hard, winter is magical and beautiful. And here at Watermoon Studios, I hosted a gnome making workshop for the town of Appleton. And the gnomes were never my idea, but I joined in with my neighbor Jackie, who fell in love with making gnomes and worked with volunteers around the local library to make gnomes and place them around town. Maybe a little secretly. There's not this grand gnome society. So at any rate, we made the gnomes, had a great workshop, a lot of fun, laughter, the sun was shining. We made more gnomes than we expected. And the gnomes started to bring this feeling up in me of how much I love the magical feeling of working with earth elements. And the gnomes are the earth elements. They protect great treasures underground. They are invisible until they want to be seen. And that's the fun thing about making a gnome out of balsam branches, is that you bring these balsam branches together, and then out of that suddenly animation appears. Animacy comes through that with the nose and the hat and the mittens. It's really a wonderful experience. So here we are in winter celebrating gnomes, and it brings me back around to what I did want to talk about here with the podcast, which is the celebration of the fire and the hearth. Domesticity, the art of domesticity, can be lost for those of us who were raised in capitalist patriarchy, where there was the hierarchy of staying home and tending to the home wasn't as important as going out and making the money. And of course, that hierarchy makes no sense at all, because people without a home could never go out and be productive for society. Women have been given all of these mixed messages. It's very complicated and difficult to find our way through that, especially without having our feet solidly on the ground of the earth. And while I'm looking to discover this, I don't know exactly what my indigenous roots are. I'm ex-indigenous, and I'm searching for where my feet land on the ground in a way that makes sense to my ancestry. Somehow, through all of this, it's important for each one of us, whether we're a woman or a man or non-binary, that we find our way back to our homes and our hearths and kindling the fire of home. And I think that's really important right now. And it's important in this season. Everyone's home has a particular cultivating force, an ecosystem that thrives when it's cared for. And so many of us barely have time to spend at home. And when we can't spend time at home, that life-giving support of a home becomes closed off to us. And then we have to seek support in other ways. Home needs occupancy, not someone who can't leave, but many people who thrive because of the centrality of home life. And not everyone lives with other people. So we need a centrality of home life that refers to a village, something like a village. Maybe there's better language that we can come up with. We need to have that feeling of home that supports us and our creative spark. The homemaker has been considered for a long time something more like the help instead of the magician. And I'm wondering how to reclaim home space as the unit, like the building block of something that creates a larger society. So the unit of building that creates the just, equitable, nourishing, and restful life I wish for myself and others. And honestly, more than many, I've had a life cultivating home space. It's always been for me a non-professional pursuit. And I've had the freedom to explore home space without the assessment of economic productivity. For a long time, as the stay-at-home, homeschooling mother, of course I had a lot to do, but I didn't have to balance that against a society who values that in terms of money. So I had the freedom to see what could work and what couldn't work from a family perspective, from a mother's and a homemaker's perspective. I think of it as simple forces at work around homemaking. The seasons demand certain activities, children and neighbors and celebrations, and caretaking of each other demands other activities. I always think about the home force. Can't you just tell when you drive by a home whether someone is metaphorically keeping the fire going? I've known families where both partners work and the place is pristine. It's clean and tidy, but creative work doesn't happen there. That creative work is happening outside the home. You know, the kids do their artwork at school. The parents are doing their creative efforting in their workplaces and not at home. So my call is to kindle the fire of home in whatever way that means. You know, like if someone were working and not being able to spend time at home, then the task would be to create a hearth fire in the workplace that supports and nurtures that system in lieu of having that at home, that it has to be somewhere. And people who aren't getting warmed by the home fires are not getting their needs met. Living in Maine, the joy of an actual wood fire is immeasurable. That radiant heat is so lovely. It's just as relaxing to me as laying in the sun on a cloudless July summer's day. Of course, not everyone has an actual fire to tend to. I know that. And rarer still are the ones who light the fire in October and keep those same embers going throughout the entire season. Can you imagine that task? It's a special joy to wake up and check the fire, to see a few orange embers still going, and to lay fresh kindling on top of them and see the fire begin again for the day as the frosty morning peels open outside the window. Do I need to spell it out directly how we each have a fire inside of us? How we have to tend our fires through the cold and darkness of winter? These seasons that we go through in life need hearth keepers. And the actual task of tending a fire, I see it as threefold. One, the actual gathering of the materials to burn. And that can take most of the year. Felling, splitting, stacking, drying, restocking, and bringing inside. There's gathering and splitting and storing the small kindling, making a box of paper and scraps to start the fire. And then there's the building of the fire. And the more attention to the preparation, the better the fire. I am a big fan of stacking and building a small little structure, like a little Lincoln log cabin in the wood stove, and taking my time and lighting it. Though honestly, for years, and even still I do this, I would try putting a few little sticks and a little bit of paper, and I'd be like fast about it. And I'd then put a huge log on it. And I was imagining that the fire would just start, and that would be that. These became known as wish logs. And when the next person arrived to tend the fire, they'd find a huge log charred on one side and no fire. And isn't that just so? It's so easy to have a great, huge idea that I want to alchemize, like the way fire alchemizes the wood. And I think the smallest spark should just light it up. But it really takes a whole structure of support and smaller bits to ignite before a big log of an idea will take flame. But when it does, the fire goes on and on. The warmth radiates. So you can see I really like that metaphor. It's working for me. The third part is the cleaning and the tidying of the hearth. Scooping ashes, sifting for charcoal that can be returned and burned again. Spreading ashes on the garden. I haven't used ashes yet to make lye, to make soap, but I do know that it can be done. Some folks spread their ashes on thick ice that sometimes builds up towards the end of winter, and it makes a pretty good de-icer, but it will leave some pretty intense boot marks in the kitchen. I can see that it's been difficult for me to tend my inner hearth this year. When I was making fires for other people, or for other ideas of who I thought I should be for other people, that motivated me to burn and burn, right? So if I thought somebody else could see me in a particular way, I would make a really good fire for that thing. And I would probably burn and burn and burn out, probably. But as the tender of my own fire, I have so many wish logs, so many ideas that I just don't give the proper attention to and they never catch. And I guess that's okay. My task this season is to slow down and kindle the fires that matter to me so that when they do alight, I'm warmed by the fire of my desire. And that for me comes out as my creative pursuits. Hestia is the fire tender in mythology. She's the Greek goddess of the hearth and home and hospitality, though I believe she existed before the Greeks. People have long known that there is a spirit of home that must be honored. And that spirit of home, when it is honored and when it is tended to, bestows gifts upon everyone who is near. That's the hospitality. And when you think of it in a certain way, the only way we have something to give in the spirit of hospitality, true hospitality, is when we are cared for, when we are warmed, when we have the support of that inner fire going and being well tended. So I invite Hestia in to this podcast. I invite her in to bestow her gifts on all of us and for us to invite her into our homes and take care of that joy of being supported by a space. And even if you don't have your own space right now, there is a way of creating this feeling on the inside. You know, our body is our home after all, and our digestive fire is the best kind of fire to tend to. So I offer me and you and us the task of tending to your fires this winter season. Your inner fires, your outer fires, your symbolic fires. And of course, if you're in the southern hemisphere right now and summer's blooming, that's also a wonderful time to tend to fires. You can bring the fires outdoors. You can cook outdoors, eat outdoors. Isn't that joy of expanding the home outward in the warmer months just delightful? It's like a long exhale. Wherever you are, you can symbolically light a fire or a candle or even a fake candle or fairy lights. Anything will do. Let yourself be romanced by the concept of making a loving home for yourself that you can actually see on the outside. Of course, when you do the outer work, you're doing the inner work. And when you're doing the inner work, you're doing the outer work, right? It all is a lovely equation. Kindling ideas and holding flames to some of your piles will give you a chance to see if they're ready to ignite. And it's okay if some of them are wish logs. As we tend to home, I like to think about the importance of mending, fixing, and repairing. And I wrote this mending prayer this was for Jackie again, and she's part of a group that does mending together, and they share that. I wrote this prayer for them. Mending is a spiritual act. As we mend, knit, or patch something today, may we also know that we are attending to a greater need of mending and fixing and patching this broken world. Isn't this also a form of activism to slowly attend to things that matter? Because we know our hands are not big enough or nimble enough or adept in the ways of solving all the sorrows and pains on this earth, we make a prayer to this one bit of mending which we attend. We weave, knit, sew, and patch our hearts into a form that meets the heart of all fixing. We know that this is the desire to bring things together, to make something whole again, and sometimes to make better something that is worn, torn, broken, and fallen apart. All matter comes from matter after all, and is a complex reconfiguring again and again. We know this is the constant dance of material life, and we observe that complexity with this work of mending. As we move our hands today, may we also move the great non-physical hands of mending and fixing and taking what is old and giving it new life. We fix the small holes because we can, and as we attend to the small holes, may our work extend with the generous spirit of bringing awareness to holes that cannot be patched and that cannot be easily fixed, yet still need attention. These unmendable holes need our witnessing. And as our imagination collaborates with our hands to fix these small matters in front of us, may it enrich our ability to imagine larger mendings. Handwork is essential to the human spirit because while we touch with our hands something we can hold, we can also participate in the magic of repair, renewal, patching, weaving, and knitting back together with awareness. And so as we work with these fibers today, may we also extend this act to our spirits and to all non-physical things that want this kind of careful appreciation and collaboration. Amen. I'm just saying amen so that you know it's the end of the prayer that I wrote, not because I didn't actually include that there. And I give you a quote by L.R. Knost. I don't know this person or writer. This was something that a friend posted and I thought was beautiful. Do not be dismayed by the brokenness of the world. All things break, and all things can be mended. Not with time, as they say, but with intention. So go, love intentionally, extravagantly, unconditionally. The broken world waits in darkness for the light that is you. And I asked the I Ching, what do you have to say about all of this? What is this time giving us? And amazingly, as the I Ching loves to surprise me, we got one, the creative. The questions asked of us, how can you liberate creative energy? What wants to be created? This is the pure creative spirit that flows through people and events. It drives towards manifestation, an inspiration that wants to be realized. It begins with an opening to the source of the creative impulse, not plans or intentions, but the vital energy that powers them. Then you create success by sustaining a continuous, two-way flow between source and action. You step into the heart of a process of creation, welcome its momentum, and find ways to join and work with it. Through constancy, this brings out intrinsic potential and yields a harvest of positive results. To be constant is to be true to your intent, faithfully aligning all your choices with your original vision and carrying your understanding through in practice and over time. Isn't that lovely? I really like that for us. And we have changing lines 5 and 6, but just to be honest, I just don't really like them. And if you want to read them, go ahead and look them up, but I just want to let them go for now. The whole thing moves to hexagram 34, great vigor. And the question to ask, how will you use your power? Where do you stand? These are the questions I asked at the beginning, so it's all coming together. How will you use your power? When you are supported and you are warm and your home fires are going and you have the community around you that you need to feel supported and safe, and you are working with the creative energy, both going and coming, that's power. How will you use your power? What do you stand for? Where do you stand? Where are your roots on the earth? So if you're like me and you're ex-Indigenous and you're not exactly sure where your Indigenous roots are, what those practices are, you can still stand on the earth where you find yourself and talk to the earth and the stones and the trees and the wind and find yourself located. Find where you stand. Learn what you stand for if you don't already know. So I like the readings this time. The difficult times apparently are not over for us, say the astrologers, but just go listen to the astrologers and figure that out. Of course they're not over, but right now is a time to tend to your fire, stay warm and cozy, celebrate. I feel that sense of wanting to celebrate the season, celebrate the long nights, celebrate the fires. And I wish that for you too. So this full moon is big and asks us to stand where we are, to celebrate the darkness, to kindle the fire, feel the warmth, and celebrate that. So I think this December, as we move into these holy days, is a time to celebrate whatever it is that you might find yourself drawn towards. This might be a month where you haven't found yourself attracted to gathering with other people in a long time, and you might find yourself needing and wanting other people, wanting to sing with other people, to eat with other people. To allow yourself, there I go again, saying allow yourself. Let's go back to me. When I find myself inspired, I hope that I can listen to that inspiration and go ahead and move maybe out of my comfort zone and do some things that are speaking to my spirit and speaking to my creative force inside. And I wish that for you too. And that is what is going on anyway, this time, with the full Beaver Moon in Gemini. May you be well. May you know peace. May all beings be well. May all beings know peace. Thanks for being here with me. As always, you can reach out to me. Let me know how you're doing, how this struck you. I'd love to include your feedback in future podcasts. And you can find me at my website, www.annheadley.com, and you can support me on Patreon. That's patreon.com/watermoonstudios. Until next time, be well.